consolidating a market doesn't just solve a business problem. It creates a category leader. It's a different mindset than what we typically talk about with entrepreneurial ventures and scalable models. We're talking about solving business problems via the pain points we've talked about quite a bit in our previous podcast. But think in terms of it already exists, but you want to be the big dog on the block, if you will.
In this episode, we reveal how bold entrepreneurs seize control of messy, overcrowded industries, rolling up the competition, uniting the market, and emerging as the undisputed leader. Please subscribe to our podcast to stay updated. And for more information, visit our website at profspirit.com. Also, if you know someone who might enjoy our content, please share our podcast with them to help us grow.
The Let's Get Entrepreneurial podcast is your ultimate launchpad for igniting ideas and skyrocketing your entrepreneurial dreams. Your two hosts will be Professor Gary Palin and serial entrepreneur Ryan Budden.
Hello. Unfortunately, Ryan won't be able to join us today. He got called away on a business issue for one of his businesses. So I'm going to do this one solo. Today's topic is consolidating a fragmented market. And that offers tremendous amount of potential. What it refers to is an industry where there are many small players and no dominant leader. Sometimes they're referred to as mom and pop companies. Instead of creating something new, you're simply organizing the chaos. A market fragmentation refers to as many niche providers. There's low barriers to entry typically. There's inconsistent customer experience associated with the fragmented industry. So that standardization is where the opportunity lies. One of the advantages of consolidating a fragmented industry is economies of scale. You have better margins, lower cost. Economies of scale is the more you produce, the less it costs you per unit, or some relationship in various areas of business. You also develop brand power with the consolidated market. You become the go-to provider in a disorganized space. Customer trust is often developed with consistent customer experience. You're standardizing quality and service. It's not as if you go to one particular retail store and you're getting X type of quality. You go to the one down the street and it's a totally different experience. Theoretically, with consolidating, there should be a consistent quality customer service across the board. And also a major advantage is it's attractive to investors and acquirers should you expand and plan on scaling the concept. There are different methods to consolidate a fragmented market. One is called a roll-up strategy. With that, you're acquiring multiple small competitors and operating under a unified system. Planet Fitness would be an example of that. There were many local gyms with no dominant brand. They expanded to underserved markets while acquiring over 2,000 locations across the United States. The second method of consolidating a fragmented industry is referred to as a platform play. The best example I can think of for that would be Uber. There were many local taxis and individual drivers, each city with different operators, different rules. With their platform, they aggregated supply and demand through a centralized application, standardized service, and pricing. The result was they created a dominant global platform with millions of drivers. The third method of consolidating a fragmented market is referred to as a branding play. An example of that would be Total Wine. There were many local liquor stores with inconsistent inventory and pricing. They consolidated by creating large format stores. There was massive selection and competitive pricing under a trusted retail brand. A fourth method to consolidate a fragmented market is referred to as tech consolidator. Shopify would be an example of that. There were many independent retailers using disconnected platforms for websites, payments, inventory, marketing. They created a unified storefront payment process, fulfillment, and marketing tools. They empowered millions of merchants with an ecosystem. They became the go-to e-commerce platform for small businesses. The last method, which is probably the most well-known, is franchising or licensing. You scale a proven model while retaining local execution. Subway would be an example of that in the fast food industry. There are many local independent sandwich shops and delis. They offered a low-cost franchise model with strong brand recognition and standardized operations. They became one of the largest fast food chains in the world. They operate in over 100 countries with more than 37,000 locations. There are many risks and challenges to consolidation. Cultural misalignment between acquired companies can be a big problem. So it's not always a natural fit that one company, say for example, in the roll-up strategy, is going to mesh with the other companies that have been acquired. Very often there are different cultures, and changing a culture of a business is a very difficult challenge. That's something you want to focus on if you're involved with a consolidation strategy. You want to look at the cultures and have a process and plan and a way to monitor how we consistently develop a standardized culture. It's a very important issue that you don't want to overlook, but very often can be misunderstood. Integration complexities. That's an area that often comes into play, especially with the various types of software and various computer applications that companies are using. Switching systems can be very, very painful. If you acquire many companies or expand to that level, and the systems that you're using are different and sometimes inconsistent, that creates quite a headache. So you want to have that planned in before you start expanding your process. The integration of teams can be a problem. Very often there's redundancy, and unfortunately that means some people have to go, and that can create some type of disruption within the company. And even your basic systems of how you operate. You want to be able to apply your systems across all companies or all locations. If you fail to do that, you're going to run into hiccups, headaches, and very often a bad customer experience, and then you create bad will, and that causes all types of issues. Some industries have regulatory scrutiny, so you want to make sure that you're following within the regulatory systems. And it can be different from, say, in the United States, from state to state. So you want to understand how that will work out in your play from regulations. You want to investigate which states have which regulations. I can remember dealing with a company that was expanding. They were doing computer training. Their model was basically they were advertising in the newspaper. This is pre-internet, by the way. They were advertising in the newspaper, offering training for Novell operating systems. When they went to go expand, I believe they went to Atlanta, there was some regulatory issues about how you could advertise these types of services in the newspaper, and it basically was banned. So their market penetration strategy that worked in one location, it was banned in the other, and that caused them all types of problems.
We have more insights coming up, but first, here's a message worth your attention.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we're taking a focused and strategic look at company culture, not as something soft or abstract, but as a real driver of competitive advantage. We're using the Cultural Drivers of Competitive Advantage Analysis, or CDCA, a framework developed by ProfSpirit LLC. It's designed to help evaluate how well your culture supports execution, innovation, and long-term differentiation. Now, this isn't about general sentiment or vague values. CDCA measures 6 very specific drivers that impact how you perform as an organization: strategic clarity, market orientation, innovation activation, empowered execution, entrepreneurial thinking, and cultural consistency. In today's market, cultural alignment isn't a nice-to-have, it's a strategic necessity. This analysis will help you see where you're strong, where things may be out of sync, and what you can do to close the gaps between where you are and where you need to go. It's about unlocking potential, not just in individuals, but in how you lead, how you collaborate, and how you execute. So let's use this as a moment to reflect, align, and elevate. If you want to explore more about the CDCA framework or talk about how it could support your team, visit profspirit.com. You'll find tools, examples, and ways to connect with us directly. Thank you for inviting us to be part of this effort. We're here to support you, so you can lead with intention and make culture your competitive edge.
Let's get back to the conversation.
A major obstacle with consolidating a fragmented market, it's very often capital intensive, especially if you're acquiring companies. But even in expanding, there is significant funding that's necessary with this. That's one of the reasons franchise models exist, because you can leverage other individuals' funding when they buy a franchise. But you still have to develop a proof of concept and have several operating systems or retail locations that are successful before you can really start developing a franchise model where people are interested. If this is of interest to you, I would suggest focusing on customer pain points. Build systems that unify, standardize, or scale. Start local or in a niche before you scale regionally or nationally. So make sure your process is successful before you expand to a very large scale. That way you can fix the problems, or if you run into any obstacles, even if you've created some badwill, it's still in a smaller environment. You may want to consider partnerships and strategic alliance if acquisitions is not viable. Who else can you work with and create some type of alliance that can help you expand and consolidate a market? Final takeaways with this: consolidating a market doesn't just solve a business problem. It creates a category leader. It's a different mindset than what we typically talk about with entrepreneurial ventures and scalable models. We're talking about solving business problems via the pain points we've talked about quite a bit in our previous podcast. But think in terms of it already exists, but you want to be the big dog on the block, if you will. Think like a strategist, act like a systems builder. You want to think strategically, but remember, building the system across many platforms is key to success in this area. Ask yourself, what industries feel messy, slow, or inconsistent, and how can I lead it? If you identify that sluggish type of system where it's messy, and if you come up with a solution to how can I lead this, then you have the potential to successfully consolidate a fragmented market. Examples of fragmented markets that you can investigate, I would suggest starting off with things that you know and things that you're observing, as I said, that look messy. Examples could be plumbing, landscaping, handyman services. Healthcare has opportunities for consolidating a fragmented industry. Dental offices, physical therapy clinics would be an example. Services very often are a potential for consolidation. One area that provides some opportunity is private tutoring. With homeschooling exploding, so many individuals are looking at homeschooling versus what was traditionally the educational model. Private tutoring could be an area that you consolidate a market. There's massive opportunities there. Auto repair, body shops, those are other examples. Senior care, home health, those are just a few examples that I've thought of that can be a viable consolidation opportunity. I would encourage everyone to identify a fragmented market in their domain or geography and then start implementing the processes that I just discussed. Let's get entrepreneurial.
We extend our gratitude for your presence and attention. Check out profspirit.com to discover resources and courses designed specifically for innovators like you. Stay on the cutting edge by following us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and other platforms as it is released. Until then, keep the entrepreneurial flame burning.